Before Romeo and Juliet was a classic, it was a groundbreaking and even experimental work. It's a genre breaker. It's extremely strange. Shakespeare writes it in his early 30s, and it becomes a hit. We start hearing about it around the same time we start hearing about him as a fashionable and popular playwright. I'm using the terms fashionable and popular not as synonyms, but to represent two different kinds of success. In the late 1590s, Shakespeare is both popular in that he's bringing in large crowds, he has a quantitatively large following, and he is fashionable in that he is bringing in socially elite crowds, people who think of themselves as the hip consumers of culture. So your Inns of Court guys, the law students, though the Inns of Court are much more than law schools in London, your gentry, et cetera, your learned types. At that moment in others, he is both fashionable, he is hip, and he is broadly popular. One of the reasons is a play like Romeo and Juliet, which starts out like a comedy, as many critics have mentioned, and turns into a tragedy. It tells us it is a comedy through every form of generic pointing. It has the boy-girl story. Romeo and Juliet are not normally appropriate tragic heroes. They're not normal for Elizabethan tragedy in that they are, while high up, they are not so high up in the world that the fate of the republic or the kingdom rests on their shoulders. They are not kings, princesses. They are not part of the royal family. They are not important generals who are going to defend the entire republic. They are not members of the Roman Senate. None of that. None of that. They are junior aristocrats who are high up enough in the world to be kind of insulated from the problems the little people like us have, but and are going to not have any problems like setting up a household when they get married because they're rolling in it, but not so high up in the world that you have to worry about the kind of diplomatic outcome of their marriage. In short, they're your classic comedy pairing, right? A aristocratic pair of youths, heterosexual, whose parents would oppose the marriage. This is the standard grounds of comedy. And Romeo and Juliet runs like a comedy for most of the first half. It has Mercutio in it. Come on. There are lots of jokes. There's comedy everywhere. There's comedy at Romeo's expense. It is ridiculous and funny. It's all fun and games until somebody loses a relative. And then halfway through, we've killed maybe arguably our funniest character, and we're off to the tragic races. This is a very different thing. I would also point out the comedy doesn't all end after that. It's not as simple as comedy in the front and tragedy in the back. Um, I will talk in another video about those musicians, a scene you almost never see performed live. And certainly, I don't think I've ever seen in a film of the play. Oh, goodness, no. Um, I would point out that we have a prologue, those famous prologues, though famously the folio edition just dropped them out. They're not necessary. But for some reason, we have a prologue before the play, and we have a prologue before Act Two, and then the chorus just vanishes. What's the chorus doing? The chorus, who's supposed to give us some kind of structural pointing, is just vanishes and gives us a sense of like whatever structure that was supposed to imply is not there. This play feels less structured as it goes, or the superficial signs of structure, like a chorus that comes in between acts, start to go away, creating more of a sense, one might argue, of chaos. On the other hand, the play is deeply structured. In fact, it's structured in ways that you don't actually pay attention to the five-act, traditional classical five-act format. It's structured around three central series of events. It's structured around three sword fight scenes. Three times, beginning and middle and end, we have a big sword fight scene. With more and more people being killed each time, or pairs of sword fights, actually, the middle and the last pairs. After which, the prince and the guards and comes on stage, and then everybody kind of floods the stage, and there's a big discussion and a political argument. This happens beginning, middle, and end. It is very clear. These are very clearly structural things. In between, the play alternates between big, large group scenes where we've crowded the stage, the Capulet's feast, etc., and small, intimate scenes where 2 or 3 characters are having private moments. That is how it works in that alternation. The play works through the character's language. How one speaks in a Shakespeare play is who one is. How you talk is who you are. I will talk more about the evolution, especially of Romeo and Juliet's individual language over the course of the play, and I guess another video. First, let me talk about how much rhyme there is. You notice this play rhymes a lot. You notice there are sonnets in it. This is not news to you. I'm sure you've encountered this play in previous classes. One thing to remember is Shakespeare is at this moment bringing back rhyme to see if it will work. He's going through a period in the 90s. To recap a little bit of English dramatic history. English popular drama has a lot of rhyme in it. And the early kind of professional English drama, the stuff that doesn't really make the canon, the stuff that falls out of fashion in Shakespeare's own lifetime and becomes kind of something you could not sell tickets to, rhymed very heavily and sometimes crudely. Then, in Shakespeare's lifetime, in his generation, by other players of his generation, and Shakespeare too, turn blank verse, unrhymed iambic pentameter, into the standard English theatrical meter, which it's going to stay for centuries after this. Verse drama is going to be blank verse. This is our metrical warhorse. Is going to be iambic pentameter without rhyme. Shakespeare goes through a period in the second half of the 1590s where he's bringing rhyme back, where he's bringing this crude, unpopular, unfashionable thing that has been superannuated back in a kind of retro way, but tuning it up to a new, shinier level. No, this is actually a far more polished and sophisticated use of rhyme than your old-timey plays your great uncle likes drama that used to rhyme but that was now considered hectastic. Shakespeare is kind of retroactively resuscitating rhyme, at least temporarily for a while, bringing it back as a technique that has been kind of abjured and that he is making work again. That is experimental. And when one of the key ways to understand what is happening in this play scene by scene is to ask when they move into rhyme and when they move out of it, and all the various effects rhyme has, and why Shakespeare might prefer rhyme or blank verse at any given moment.